21 of the Army's toughest mountaineers are preparing to climb Everest the hard way. Their aim is to become the first British team ever to climb the notoriously difficult and deadly West Ridge all the way to the top. On this treacherous route, they'll have to battle 150-mile-an-hour winds, freezing temperatures and sheer cliffs of ice, while their bodies self-destruct from the extreme altitude. Of the 2,219 people who've summited Everest, only 19 have ever made it via the West Ridge, and 21 have died trying. Over the next 8 weeks, the Army will experience the very worst that Everest can throw at them.
Still got the grip.
They'll face constant danger.
Just sort it out, jumping at the top, and then I'll fall down a hole.
Intense highs.
Bring it on!
And bitter lows.
Just put me off the line.
There'll be tensions.
Dig. If you get this on in a fucking second.
Triumphs.
Win or lose, we always booze.
And tragedies.
I mean, the speed, if someone's falling off that, is going to be fast.
All our dollars was from up this end.
No, he went the whole way down.
There's no easy way up Everest, but with the West Ridge, the Army have picked the toughest.
What do you think of that then, Dave?
Everest is 8.8 kilometres tall. At almost 7 times the height of Ben Nevis, it reaches the cruising altitude of jet airliners. The West Ridge route starts with a vertical kilometre of sheer ice known as the French Spur. Then it's a straight slog for 1.5 kilometres along the deadly knife edge of the West Ridge itself, before climbing a further kilometre into the thin air of the death zone, tackling the most technically challenging climbing of all to reach the top. There are at least 18 different routes up Everest. Most popular by far is the South Col route, with fixed ropes permanently in place. But on the isolated and technical West Ridge, there's nothing. Attempted by only the most elite climbers, it demands a siege approach. For 6 weeks, the whole team will work together to fix ropes and establish a series of 5 camps and supply them with food and oxygen. Only then can the strongest 4 climbers make their attempt on the summit. This is not the first time the military have attempted this route. They tried once in 1988 and again in 1992, and both times they failed.
I didn't get one chance. We blew it right out the window.
Bloody good effort.
Well, I try not to use that word fail, because
this time they're convinced they'll succeed and live to tell the tale.
My idea 3 years ago to set up an army trip to go to Everest.
Expedition leader Dave Bunting is a warrant officer in the Army's Physical Training Corps. A veteran of 9 Himalayan expeditions, he's the most experienced mountaineer in the Army.
What an amazing place to be. Just awesome.
I'm not going out there to summit. That's not my ultimate aim. If somebody stands on the summit, I've succeeded.
Second in command, Major Dave Wilson, has served in Bosnia, Kosovo, Afghanistan and Iraq.
For the Diamond Ditch team.
No stranger to the cold, he's trained in Arctic warfare and has spent 3 winters training commandos in cold weather survival.
Something risky. You get the excitement out of it. Makes your heart pump, makes your adrenaline flow, brings you to life.
Absolutely and totally knackered.
The 2 Daves have spent the last 3 years assembling a team of 21 of the Army's most hardcore mountaineers. The climbing leader is John Doyle, a joint services climbing instructor and the Army's most experienced technical climber.
It's not going to get any easier. You think it's bad now, it's going to get worse at 6,000 metres. It's going to get worse at 7, it's going to be unbearable at 8,000 metres.
On his last trip to the Himalayas, he scaled the awesomely difficult southwest face of Kanchenjunga. At 8,586 metres, it's the world's 3rd highest peak. The expedition doctor is Malcolm Russell. As well as GP duties, Malcolm's treated the dying and wounded on battlefields around the world. Now he's on Everest's front line.
Dripping some fluid from his nose. It did look like the fluid that surrounds the brain.
In charge of the expedition's food, Warrant Officer Jude Humphreys happens to be the only woman on the trip. She's an accomplished climber who scaled peaks in Alaska and the Himalayas.
Every second stop, I'm going to take a drink.
Having been in the Army since she was 19, she's quite used to roughing it with the lads.
We get to Camp 5, they're 2-man tents, but I think we're squeezing 3 people in them. There'll be plenty of room.
And modesty's just not an issue.
I don't mind standing naked and washing myself, but I wouldn't want to put anybody else sort of think, ooh.
And then there's Dave Bunting's best mate from school, Lee Woody Woodhouse.
Because he knows when to have fun and he knows when to be serious.
Very short. Not particularly bright.
He's an idiot, is what I'm saying.
Woody's more of a heli pilot than a mountaineer, but Dave Bunting never leaves home without him.
I had a dream that some bronchial warriors were taking on the Hornboom Couloir. But it's not a dream.
After 3 years of planning and training, every one of them is at the very peak of their physical fitness. They all have their strengths and just the odd weakness. It's late March, and the team have arrived in Kathmandu. They are not travelling light. To put in a new route along the West Ridge, they must bring everything with them. 13 tons of kit packed in 360 barrels. 10 kilometres of rope, 150 oxygen cylinders, 2,000 flapjacks, enough medical kit to start a hospital, and a Union Jack for the summit. It's a 10-week expedition, but the first week will be spent on the road, slowly acclimatising on the journey from Nepal into Tibet and up to the foot of Mount Everest. Four days in, and there's an emotional moment. While trekking, another Dave Pearce, spots Everest for the first time.
What's that big lump over there?
Jummalunga, Goddess Mother of Earth.
Dave is the climbing supervisor for the film crew. He's a former Royal Marine, and as the only person on the expedition to have summited Everest before, is totally at home in this environment.
It's big. Yeah. And from here, 50 miles away almost, in distance, which gives you some idea of scale.
It's all very pretty from this distance, and even the two expedition leaders go a bit soft.
You get a day like this, a clear blue sky day for a summit day, it'd be fantastic. Got emotion actually.
I am very happy. How can I not be happy with that there, in this weather like this and this group of people?
As the team gets higher, they start to feel the effects of the thin air. The task of keeping their strength up falls to Jude.
For the check-in and the acclimatisation phase, I've given them one enhanced bar.
Jude's job is close to everyone's heart, precisely calculating the food for the entire expedition.
I could be the heroine because, oh, Jude, the food's fantastic. Look at us, we're all put on weight, it's brilliant. Or it could be, everybody hates me. Woody's in next. Make sure he doesn't get double rations, I've seen him.
Hey, yeah, right, Woody. One at a time.
Heli pilot Woody can't resist Jude's treats. But when not focused on his stomach, his thoughts might just wander elsewhere. He's getting married as soon as he gets back home.
Focus of my attention right now is definitely Everest. Not to put the wedding or any part of it in particular melt into any insignificance, because obviously that's hugely important and significant.
My little comforter is rubbing this soft patch here. I'm going to miss that.
I'm going to miss you rubbing it.
I just want him to come back. As long as he comes back safe and sound, that'll be okay.
But Woody will have to wait 3 months for his next rub. The team are at 5,100 metres above sea level, the trucks reach the end of the road, and the real expedition is about to begin.
We've arrived, bring it on!
It's time to check the essentials have made it in one piece.
This is what we pack in our barrels.
And what are these?
It's underwear for the trip. There you go, I'm sorted to climb the mountain.
Dave Bunting was more choosy about packing his barrel.
I wasn't going to tell you this. My auntie sent me that. I mean, I'm 38 years old. Am I really going to take that to Everest with me? I'm not telling her that. She'll think I've taken it with me. But I am not taking that with me.
Codenamed Barrel 62, Jude's food barrels include the British Army's most potent weapon.
This is barrel 62, the cheese barrel. That's how it's supposed to be. Get a load of that. Well done, barrel 62.
Climbing Sherpas are a crucial part of the team. Famously strong, they'll help carry supplies high up the mountain.
This is a very important ceremony, and we can't go in that direction without doing this properly.
To bond the team and provide spiritual protection on the climb, they ask a local lama to bless everyone and their equipment. It all has a grim relevance. Just the day before, Everest claimed her first victim of the year. On the other side of the mountain, Sherpa Tuk Bahadur collapsed with altitude sickness, quickly dying from flooding of the lungs. Unfazed by the dangers ahead, the team's spirituality takes a familiar form.
Well, the geezers were dishing it out, so I figured it was a polite part of their custom to sup it, so here we go.
It's our tradition, Rooks, you know that, don't you? Bless Budweiser.
Coming up, team leader Dave Bunting gets a phone call threatening the entire expedition.
We're going to lose everybody here.
And the perilous ice of the French spur brings home the deadly nature of the task ahead. The British Army is tackling Everest via the treacherous West Ridge route. They'll face lethal avalanches, hidden crevasses and hurricane-force winds. In over 40 years of attempts on this route, just 19 climbers have ever made it to the top. None of them was a Brit. No route up Everest is easy, but unlike the south side, the isolated West Ridge forces them to fix ropes the entire way up the mountain. This will take them 6 exhausting weeks before expedition leader Dave Bunting chooses the elite 4 strongest and bravest climbers to push for the summit.
A lot of people want to go to the summit. We will not be able to fit that in to our plan.
The team have just arrived at the Tibetan side of the mountain and are preparing for a 6-hour walk to the site of their base camp.
Thank you very much.
But suddenly, second in command, Major Dave Wilson gets a phone call that sounds like it could jeopardise the entire expedition.
Can you get this number again?
There's been a military disaster, and he tells Dave Bunting that a brigadier from the UK is demanding 7 key members of the team return home.
They really are the backbone of the expedition.
In losing Pete, we don't lose a climber.
No, you can't, though. Logistics-wise, this is such a distance we need him. Brigadier host, David Wilson again.
You haven't convinced me really about Rivers and Longbottom. Ian and Pete are really working on side. I'd like to speak to Dave Bunting about this.
But the brigadier sounds strangely familiar.
Hello, sir.
Dave? Yes, listen, I spoke to Dave Wilson, who I've known for some time now, and really, it's just not convinced me about Ian and Pete. What I'd like you to do really is convince me that why you want them to stay there, because it really demands all hands on deck, this situation, bearing in mind it's an open line.
Okay, so I mean, obviously from the military point of view, obviously Dave's put me completely in the picture about what he thinks should happen. With Pete in particular, the route we're doing is obviously huge and a massive logistical undertaking, and that's where Pete is so key to it.
Well, surely Pete's just moving the kit around, isn't he? Can't you get a local to do that?
It'd be impossible to replace him with a local, sir.
Dave, you're not convincing me, chum. What about Ian?
Hello?
We've lost the signal. I'll have to call back. Nightmare, isn't it?
We're going to lose everybody here.
We're going to have to fucking call it soon. He's fucking snapping.
Dave's Everest dream and 3 years' work seem to be collapsing around him. Unless...
You fucking... That's one of the best April Fools I've ever seen. Obviously revenge is going to come quite swiftly.
Woody, the brigadier, had better lie low. But with more people dying on the West Ridge route than making it to the top, Dave knows he'll have real scares ahead. The biggest single body count on the West Ridge was in 1974, when a French team was swept away by a massive avalanche. 6 climbers, including team leader Gérard Desboisseaux, were buried alive, and their bodies have never been recovered. It's been over 20 years since anyone's conquered this route, and 2 previous British military attempts have failed to reach the top. But the team are convinced that this time they'll succeed. The road has run out, and the only way to shift tonnage at these altitudes is by yak. Tillman's base camp lies in the valley of the Rongbuk Glacier at 5,600 metres, 2 kilometres higher than the highest ski lift in the Alps. The thin air at this altitude causes the body's internal organs to steadily deteriorate, making permanent life in this twilight zone impossible.
Tillman's camp, which is going to be our base camp, 5,500 metres, and just there is the route. So we're glad to get here actually, so we consider this to be the start line of what we're going to be doing the next couple of months. It's brilliant to be here.
Life at base camp will be a holiday compared to the gruelling conditions high on the mountain. The team will eat proper cooked food, be able to call home, and even take a solar-powered shower. With Tillman's established, the next task is to find a site for Camp 1. The expedition members are divided into 4 smaller climbing teams, each with a rope leader, 3 other climbers and 2 Sherpas. The first team up the mountain is Climbing Team A, headed by John Doyle, joined by Paul Chiddle, Guy Homan and Woody. Roped up to stop them falling into crevasses 50 metres deep, it takes them 7 hours to make it to the head of the glacier.
Going to the glacier, just below the French spur you can see behind us. This is going to be the site of Camp 1. It's about maybe 500 metres from the French spur. It's pretty level, nice solid ground. Good view of the French spur all the way across to the shoulder, to the summit. So it should be a good spot for Camp 1 hopefully.
With Camp 1 established at 6,100 metres, John and his team return to Tillman's for a debrief. More than anyone else, he knows what's next.
From here on upwards, every day is going to be grueler. There's no way around it, that's the reality of mountain climbing. Prepare yourself for that, it's not going to get any easier. If you think it's bad now, it's going to get worse at 6,000 metres. It's going to get worse at 7, it's going to be unbearable at 8,000 metres. Okay, so prepare yourself on every single day, and then you won't go far wrong.
It's absolutely critical that you get your hydration sorted out, that you do eat, that when you're on a rope team, if you need to stop to have a break, that you do stop.
Today, for John Doyle's team, the seriously technical and potentially lethal climbing begins. The base of the French spur presents a near vertical wall of ice, broken only by gaping crevasses. With so few climbers having attempted this route, the team have to work out their own line up the flank of the spur and on to its ridge.
So try left first, across the berg from the steer, straight across the ridge, and on the ridge, hopefully best safety. Yeah.
The first climbers to summit by the West Ridge were Americans Tom Hornbein and Willie Unsold in 1963. Tom gave his name to the formidable Hornbein couloir, a narrow gully leading up the impenetrable north face. But summiting late, the pair were forced to spend the night near the top. Willie Unsold paid the price. His feet froze solid, and he lost 9 of his toes.
Got a bit of a snow bridge, so try and cross through here. We'll get an ice screw in and start heading up towards the rock up there.
First to strike the mountain in anger, it's ace climbing instructor Sergeant Paul Chiddle's job to attach the ropes to the wall of ice. The snow stakes and ice screws provide his only protection from a fatal fall. Each team of 4 will take it in turns to lead climb, working in rotation at increasingly extreme altitudes for 3 or 4 days, before returning exhausted to Tillman's. Paul's the second youngest member of the expedition, but it's his lifelong dream to summit Everest, and his impressive climbing skills are already proving invaluable.
Climb 60-degree ice at 6,000 metres is no mean feat. With a rucksack on your back, snow stakes. You know, it's just awesome, and Paul is sort of cruised up it. If there's an accident here, it's very hard for helicopters to get in. Incredibly difficult for us to casevac. So it's very important that these early stages, you know, guys remain as safe as possible.
But crossing a large crevasse is never safe.
Paul?
The others can only look up and hope the rope holds.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. I can see down about another 30 or 40 feet.
Lead climbing is dangerous, energy-sapping work, as Bulgarian Hristo Prodanov found to his extreme cost. Back in 1984, Prodanov became the only person ever to solo climb Everest via the West Ridge. But his triumph was short-lived. Exhausted by his efforts, he died on the way back down, perhaps proving the siege approach is the only way to conquer the West Ridge and live to tell the tale. When not in the lead or recovering at Tillman's, the other teams will gradually carry loads up the mountain, creating a supply chain for the final summit bid.
Camp 1, this is Tillman's, over.
Dave Bunting sets about organising the movement of supplies up the mountain.
Dave, hello mate. First question is, do you need a ladder up there?
If there's a resource to bring the ladder up, then John and his team would like the ladder up today.
Yes, come on.
Yeah,
ladder please, yeah.
Over the next 5 weeks, 1.5 tons of supplies, even ladders for crevasse crossings, will gradually be carried as far as 3 vertical kilometres up the mountain. The army believe this methodical approach is the only way to reach the top. The siege is underway.
The mountain and the weather is kind to us. I still think it's going to be the hardest thing that any of us have ever done. We've come here to get the Brit on the summit via the West Ridge. Who that is, it doesn't matter. So we've all just got to bust our balls, and hopefully we'll be successful.
Next time, a severe blizzard traps 5 climbers high on the mountain. The Rongbuk Glacier turns into a death trap.
One of the Sherpas fell in a crevasse.
And there's a potentially fatal medical emergency at base camp.
He was dripping some fluid from his nose. It did look like the fluid that surrounds the brain.